In this video, I'm just gonna go over the #1 mistake I see people making while doing sumo deadlifts and how to correct it. Goodbye. All right, so the #1 mistake I see people making, especially beginners, when they switch over to sumo deadlift or they try sumo deadlifting, going from conventional deadlifting, is they treat it like a conventional deadlift with their legs wider and their hands inside their arms. So what they end up doing is they do this. As they go down and they try to bring their shins to the bar as if it were a conventional deadlift, and then they have their hips really low and they actually try to squat it up. What ends up happening is they're off balance, their fucking base of support is way in front of their center of gravity, which with this particular stance you're gonna lose your balance, and you're trying to squat the weight up, so your hips are just gonna rise and the bar's gonna be even further from your shins by the time it starts coming up, and you're already set up for failure. So this is kind of what it'll end up looking like. And then it'll come up. Oh God! So this is the thing with sumo deadlift that definitely isn't intuitive, and I think is what makes it a little bit more technical than conventional. I like to use the analogy of conventional is like fucking, and sumo is like making love. So you actually need to set up with your shins touching the bar when your legs are straight during the setup. And so in order to actually get down to the bar, you're not moving your shins forward, you're externally rotating your knee. And by externally rotating your knee, you're activating all those tiny glute muscles and extra glute muscles, because you have more than one, believe it or not.
Here's a monkey with 4 asses.
Because you're trying to use as many muscles as possible, and you want to use your hamstrings and glutes from the bottom and not your back. Once you start from this position, there's 2 things you got to do. You got to figure out what your starting hip height is, which is going to be higher than you probably would expect, because you're not squatting the bar up. You're going to be starting with your hips as high as they are when you basically externally rotate your knee and you slowly go down to the bar. And as soon as your hands touch the bar with your back, trying to keep your back as upright as possible, that is going to be your starting hip height. So your shins are touching the bar while your legs are straight. So you're externally rotating your knees and keeping your upper body as rigid as possible. Externally rotate your knees, and that is your starting hip height.
I've got something in my front pocket for you. Why don't you reach on in my pocket and see what it is?
And then, once you have your starting hip height, this is just a personal preference for me in order to stay tight. Then I go back up, with my legs straight, my shins touching the bar. I grab the bar and I slowly drop my hips and externally rotate my knees. And as soon as my upper body is rocking up during this process, as soon as there's tension on the bar, then I basically just drive my feet into the ground and lock my legs. And that's my only thought process. So once you get this groove down, and I'll probably make a separate video on how to actually take the slack out properly from the bottom, but this video is just about the setup. So the #1 problem I see beginners when they sumo deadlift is treating it like a wide stance conventional deadlift. Let me do a couple reps and go through this with you again.
Then grab onto it, it's just for you. Give it a little squeeze and say, how do you do?
So the way I like to actually start the lift is not from here. But now that we know our starting hip height, we know where our hips need to be when we are rotating our body down and when we need to start the lift. One more time. Well, you notice, fucking cardio more than 1 rep, right? So you'll notice that the second 2 reps are a little bit faster. That's when I was employing the second technique that I'll go over in the next sumo tutorial, and how to actually take the slack out properly at the bottom. But you probably saw, I started with my shins touching the bar, and then I grabbed the bar as I rotated my hips down, and the bar started to have tension on it from my upper body rotating. Then once there was enough tension, 100, 200 pounds of tension, what's kind of a preference, then all I was drive my feet through the ground. So I'll do a couple from the side, and that'll conclude the video. Thanks for watching. Definitely need to work on my hip flexibility even more in order to get my head further back and behind the bar. But it's work in progress. I'll probably make another video about how to increase your deadlift, your sumo deadlift, without necessarily even being stronger by becoming more flexible. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Okay, bye.
Something in my front pocket for you. Why don't you reach on in my pocket and see what it is? Then grab onto it, it's just for you. Give it a little squeeze and say, how do you do? There's something in my front pocket. There's something in my front pocket. There's something in my front pocket.
What up, dudes? And I'm also hungover as fuck.